So this person asked, has Google made any changes to the algorithm in the last few days? I can see our organic has fallen off a cliff since last Tuesday, but don't know if people are just away on holiday. I tried to find rankings in Google Search Console, but didn't find it. But this overall week versus last week is down, and it's affected our orders. They are way down. Where in Google Search Console do I find this information? So obviously the core update that had been rolling out for the last 19 days finished, I think it was on Tuesday. And we have another relevant question about what do you do when a core update finishes rolling out? So two questions there. One about how do you find out about it in Google Search Console. So if they go into Google Search Console, you see the performance. If you click in a few clicks, you'll get a bit more detail. And what you can basically look via queries, but also by pages. I think it isn't selected by default, but if you click average position, you'll be able to see positions. Clicks should be, I think that is by default. So you tend to see impressions and clicks by pages or queries, whatever you want to look at. I think the most helpful part there is you can see click difference. And if you do a comparison from the period that you're worried about versus the period before, you should be able to identify whether it's just one particular page, if it's a range of pages, and so on. If you have any other webmaster tools, you could do a comparison so you'll know if it's to do with the update or if it's just to do with, you mentioned that it could just be the school holidays. So that could be a way.
You just also said about another Google Search Console. So this is why it's also really important to make sure that you do have Bing as well, set up Bing Webmaster Tool so you can see that. And it also said, back to the organic has fallen off a cliff, I would also have a look at some of the pages. Maybe some other pages are ranking higher than others. And also just check your orders too. Maybe you're having a lot of orders via organic search, or maybe you're also getting a lot of referrals as well. Like you mentioned about the school holidays, sometimes it can be seasonality as well. But I would also just say, please don't panic about what's happened. It could be because of the update, but it could just because of seasonality as well.
Something that I see quite a lot with e-commerce stores as well is if you take a look, for example, at historic SERPs. So if you have a SEO tool, rather than just using Search Console, you can get a lot more data around it. And sometimes taking a look at the SERPs and comparing them to, say, last week, this week, maybe a month ago, this week, could be the fact that you have a competitor who's rolled out a new strategy or some of their pages are getting traction. And with e-commerce, quite often, for example, a couple of new websites have gone in and pushed a lot of people down. So there's so many different reasons. And I think if you, instead of looking in Google Search Console specifically, if you use a tool that does lots of different things, you're going to find it a lot easier to say, look at analytics, compare different periods, take a look at your rankings, take a look at competitors, and just get an overall idea of your performance and what's going on, because it could be Google, there could be another story to it. Maybe, I don't know, something has gone wrong. Maybe if you're using, for example, like Shopify or another different solution, sometimes they mess up different. So look, basically just lots of diagnosis and you should be okay, but don't panic.
That's great. Thank you. Very good to look at the competitors as well. What are they doing?
Just on that, actually, because I've been doing a lot of analysis since I think it was Tuesday. And actually what you said then, just looking at the search results to see what's happened is quite interesting. So for example, there are some industries where, for instance, product grids, a few of them where they were sitting at, say, positions 8 and 9 have gone up the rankings, and that can impact what position one looks like, whether it's above or below, and also whether there were discussions in forums before or there are questions or anything like that in the search results. And often you don't get that information solely from Google Search Console. So that's really interesting. Julia, do you have anything to add? What would you do if a Google update has just finished rolling out? What do you do first?
Monitor, just see what happens with your traffic and whatever, actually confirm that it is related to this algorithm update, especially if one tool tells you your revenue is down, another tool tells you also rankings and traffic are a bit fluctuating at the moment. First confirm that they're actually related, because there might be different reasons for both things. And then Google Search Console is usually the first place where I look to see what has actually happened. Mike mentioned the dates comparison. That's where I go in. And that's one thing where people often get confused if you're looking at an individual page or an individual keywords, the average ranking. So for this, we always need to look at page and keyword in combination. So you can filter in Search Console to see only the data for one specific page. You could even drill down to one specific country and then look at what are the queries that this page is ranking for, and then compare the rankings before and after, because the number of the average ranking can get a bit funny if you're looking at too big of a data set, and you might draw the wrong conclusions.
I absolutely love that point, because I find that when you're dealing with e-commerce stores specifically, you can have some products that are really good and some products that are doing really badly. And if you're looking at average, it doesn't give you a very good picture of what your whole site is doing and what different segments are doing. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. So looking at individual pages is so much better than just looking at an average.
I was going to say there's lots of comments in the chat, so thank you everyone for always adding in your 2 cents. Simon's talking about first check what changes have made to your site by anyone, including the server. So that's a good point. We didn't mention that. Run a quick tech audit, and then you can worry about the Google core update or the core changes. Natalia was talking about check seasonality, compare the Google Trends for the main queries with Search Console data. That's a very good point, and that ties back to that seasonality, because you could have been a place where you don't have that interest anymore. Maybe back to school supplies, for example. People have already probably bought that. And she mentioned that you'll see if the interest has actually shifted, or maybe it just is your traffic. Lee's talking about see what the competitors are doing, see if they've been affected or not. So thanks everyone for that. But yeah, really, with any sort of updates, really important to not panic and have a plan or strategy in place. And to make sure that if you're dealing with people that don't know much about SEO, or maybe you're the only person in the company that is doing the SEO, make sure that you have these sort of updates with them. Oh, listen, we've had an update and we haven't seen any changes yet, or we have, and this is our next step. If you are communicating with other people, don't just say, oh, we have an update. Follow up with, okay, these are our steps and what we'd like to do, and how you want others also to get involved. I think when we have these types of updates, it's always a great way to then make sure that you can talk more about SEO if you're not already doing so in your company, and try and get a bit more buy-in as well, get some allies.
And I think what Walid said as well about just looking at competitors and seeing who has benefited if you feel like you've been impacted, and try and work out maybe why those pages or why those websites have improved over yours, and see if there's anything you can learn